The first time I heard my mother call my name after she died, I was in the basement trying to reset a tripped breaker. And for about half a second, I honestly thought grief had finally cracked something in my head. It wasn't loud. That's the part that made it worse. It was just her voice, at normal volume from upstairs. Clear, casual, the way she used to call for me when dinner was ready, my name drawn out slightly in that impatient tone she always had when I took too long answering. I froze with one hand still on the electrical panel and every hair on my arm standing straight up. I remember thinking immediately, no, absolutely not. Because when someone you love dies, your brain does weird things. Well, people talk about hearing their voice, seeing them in crowds, smelling their perfume in random places. I knew all that. I'd read about it. My mother had been gone for maybe 3 weeks at that point, after a sudden aneurysm, and I was still helping my dad sort through the house because he couldn't really function yet. He'd sleep in his recliner with the TV on and wake up confused. Half the cabinets were still exactly as she'd left them. Her reading glasses sat on the kitchen counter for days because neither of us could bring ourselves to move them. So when I heard her voice from upstairs that afternoon, I told myself it was stress, memory, exhaustion, anything except what it sounded like. I climbed the basement, stairs 2 at a time anyway. My dad was asleep in the den, TV on low. House empty, no one there. I didn't mention it, not then. I wish I had, because maybe if I'd said it out loud early on, one of us could have found a logical explanation before things kept happening. The house itself was old, built in the late 1940s. Narrow hallways, original hardwood under the carpet, radiator heat that clicked and hissed all winter. It made noises constantly. Pipes knocked, floorboards popped. Doors shifted in their frames when the weather changed. So when strange little things started after that, I kept folding them into those explanations. A lamp switched on in the guest room after everyone swore they turned it off. The radio in the kitchen crackling to life on static around 2 a.m. twice in 1 week. My father finding the back door open in the mornings, even though he was obsessive about locking it. We both blamed ourselves for that stuff. He'd say maybe I forgot. I'd say maybe he did. We were tired, grieving, distracted. That's what made it easy to dismiss at first. Then came the voicemail. My father still had one of those old landline answering machines with the tiny cassette-style digital playback. And one evening it started blinking with a new message notification even though the phone hadn't rung. We played it expecting spam or a robocall. There were maybe 6 seconds of static, then what sounded like breathing, slow, wet almost, then a soft scraping noise like something rubbing against the receiver. Then it cut off. No caller ID, no number stored. My father unplugged the machine after that because it unsettled him so much, though neither of us admitted it directly. I started staying overnight more often because I didn't like leaving him alone there. And that's when I began noticing the timing. Most of it happened between 2 and 3 in the morning. Not every night, but enough that I started waking up before it, like my body expected something. A door clicking shut somewhere down the hall, footsteps overhead when no one was upstairs. Once, the sound of kitchen drawers opening and closing one at a time. I got up with a baseball bat that night and searched the entire house. Nothing. Every drawer shut, windows locked, alarm still armed on the back door. We even had the alarm company come test the sensors because I convinced myself maybe they were malfunctioning and somehow making noise. They said everything checked out. Then one morning I found all 6 dining room chairs pulled away from the table by the exact same distance, like someone had measured it. My father stared at them for a long time before asking if I had done it as some kind of joke. I thought he was kidding until I saw his face. He genuinely believed maybe I had. That was the first time I knew he'd started noticing things too. He finally admitted he'd been hearing my mother's bedroom slippers in the hallway at night. Not footsteps. Specifically, the dragging shuffle her slippers made against the hardwood. He said sometimes they stopped outside his bedroom door. I remember both of us sitting there in total silence after he said that, because saying it out loud made the whole thing feel more real, even if neither of us wanted to use the word haunting or anything like that. We hired practical people. Electricians, locksmiths, HVAC techs. My uncle came over to inspect the attic because he thought maybe raccoons or squirrels were in the walls. Nothing. No wiring issues. No signs of forced entry. No animals. No carbon monoxide leak either. I bought detectors for every floor after reading that poisoning can cause hallucinations. The house checked clean. Still, things kept escalating in ways that made less and less sense. One afternoon, while sorting clothes in my mother's bedroom, I found every framed photo on her dresser turned face down. Not fallen over, not crooked, deliberately laid flat. I asked my father if he'd done it because maybe the photos upset him. He looked genuinely frightened and said no. A week later, I was brushing my teeth in the upstairs bathroom when the shower curtain behind me moved. Not fluttered, pulled, slow and steady, like someone had run a hand down the other side. I yanked it back so hard I nearly tore the rod down. Empty tub, window closed, no vent on. I left the bathroom light on for the rest of the night like a child. At that point, I started documenting everything in the Notes app on my phone because I needed some record that it was happening and not just a blur of fear and grief. Dates, times, exact details. Maybe I thought a pattern would emerge. Maybe I thought proving it on paper would make it easier to solve. Instead, the pattern only made it stranger. The disturbances almost always happened after one specific thing. Someone mentioned my mother directly. Not every single time, but enough to notice. We'd be going through her things, telling stories, saying her name, and then that night something in the house would happen. Again, I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like a ghost story, and I'm telling you, I'm not someone who jumps to that. I kept trying to reason through it. Maybe grief made us hyper-aware after emotional conversations. Maybe we noticed normal house noises more because we were already thinking about her. That explanation worked until the night of the birthday dinner. My father's birthday was 2 months after she passed, and my sister came over with her husband and kids to force some normalcy into the house. We ate takeout around the dining room table, tried awkwardly to celebrate, and for a couple hours it actually felt almost okay. Then my niece, who was 7 at the time, looked toward the staircase mid-conversation and said, very casually, "Grandma's standing there." Every adult at that table stopped moving. My sister laughed immediately, too fast, too loud, and asked what she meant. My niece pointed toward the dark hallway by the stairs and said, "She said, don't forget the candles." Then she went right back to coloring on her placemat like nothing had happened. My father turned white. The room went dead silent. Here's the thing nobody knew except him and me. My mother used to insist on candles for every birthday, even for adults, and we had forgotten them that night. They were still in the pantry. My niece had no way of knowing that mattered. My sister later swore she'd never talked to her about it. Maybe she overheard something once, I don't know. Maybe coincidence. But after that, even the skeptics in the family stopped joking about the house. My father lasted another month before deciding to sell. He said whether the house was haunted, broken, or just poisoning our minds somehow, he couldn't stay there anymore. We packed quickly. The final week there was the worst of it. Cabinets opening overnight, lights on in empty rooms, the thermostat repeatedly set to 58, even though no one touched it. And then, on the last night before movers came, I slept on the den couch while my father stayed with my sister because he couldn't handle another night there. Around 2:27 a.m., I know because I checked, I woke to the sound of someone walking slowly across the floor above me in my mother's old bedroom, heavy enough to creak the boards in sequence. Back and forth, back and forth. I sat there frozen under a blanket, listening for maybe 30 seconds before grabbing the fireplace poker and forcing myself upstairs. The bedroom door was closed, light off. The footsteps stopped the second I reached it. I stood there with my hand on the knob, hard hammering, and I remember this awful certainty that if I opened the door too fast, something would be standing there. I opened it anyway. The room was empty, completely still, but the window was open, wide open. That was impossible because the painted frame had swollen shut years earlier. It took both me and my father shoulder checking it months before just to crack it for cleaning. Yet there it was, open enough for curtains to move in the night air. I shut it and couldn't get it back open after. Couldn't even budge it. We sold the house 3 months later to a younger couple who flipped old homes. I never told them everything. Just said the place had some electrical quirks. For almost a year, I heard nothing. Then one afternoon, I got a call from the woman who bought it. She'd found my number for the realtor because, in her words, she had kind of a weird question. She asked if my mother had owned a wind-up metronome. I said yes. She used one when teaching piano lessons in the front room. We packed it months before. The woman went quiet, then said she kept hearing one ticking in the house late at night. Same room, same corner, but couldn't find anything there. Maybe she was messing with me. Maybe she'd heard local rumors and wanted to spook the former owners. I honestly don't know. I told myself that's probably what it was. I still tell myself that. But every now and then, usually when I'm up too late and the house is quiet, I think about the way my niece looked toward that staircase, like she was seeing someone familiar. And I remember that on the night I heard my mother call my name from the basement, I'd gone upstairs immediately afterward and found the candles already sitting on the kitchen counter. Even though neither my father nor I had taken them out,